Okay, now I can call the meeting of the Common Council of the City of Platteville to order. Today is Tuesday, April 28th. It's 7:03 PM, and we are in the council chambers in Platteville. And before we start roll call, I would like to welcome Tom Knoll, as this is his actual first official council meeting. So,
Well, thank you very much. And I'm very welcome to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. And just to let the people of Platteville know, if I can, well, I don't have it. I plan on having a thank you sign out here saying, just underneath my name, thank you, Platteville. I appreciate the opportunity.
okay, very good. All right, Jan, now we'll do roll call.
Mike Den,
Here.
Barbara Doss,
Here?
Barbara Stockhausen has been excused. Tom Knoll,
Here.
Ken Killian,
Here.
Eileen Nichols has been excused, and Amy Seabolt Wilson. Here.
Okay, the first item on our agenda tonight is a public hearing on the rezoning request for 1205 Union Street, and we will start with a staff presentation.
Okay, we received the application requesting a zoning change for the property at 1205 Union Street. The property as it exists right now is zoned R1 Single Family, and it also has the R-Low Limited Occupancy Overlay District. So as it sits right now, that property is limited basically to single-family use, and the R-Low Overlay District has a maximum occupancy for unrelated individuals of 2. So else outside of that overlay district, you can have a maximum of 4 unrelated individuals. There is no limitation on the number of related family members that can live there, so that doesn't apply either way. So his request is, as submitted in the application, is to change the zoning to R2, 1 and 2 family residential, and remove the overlay district. Since this went to the Plan Commission and came out in your packet, he visited me. I don't know if he's here yet. He visited me and said the R2 portion of that request was actually a mistake. He filled it out wrong. I think he looked at the zoning on one of his other properties and it was zoned R2 and he just assumed it would be the same. His main request is to remove the overlay zoning designation. However, the application as submitted was to request both of those changes, so I think to be thorough, we should consider both changes, since that's what was submitted. So anyway, that's the request. Theoretically, the R2 designation, if approved, would allow that property to be converted to a duplex from the current single-family situation as well. He had said that's not his intent, but if that zoning were approved, that would be permitted. The Plan Commission considered this item at their April 6th meeting. They voted on both of those changes separately. They actually voted to recommend denial of the R1 to R2 change and also recommend denial of the removal of the overlay district designation. If you look at the change from the R1 to R2 and how that compares to the recommendations in the comprehensive plan, there are a couple of items where it does not comply with those recommendations. So staff would recommend denial of that request. The R-Low designation isn't really identified or addressed in the comprehensive plan, so it doesn't provide much guidance on that. The ordinance itself basically says the council should take into consideration the impact on the neighborhood and the community in general when making zoning change considerations for zoning changes. So that's basically gives it up the power to you to look at the overall impacts on the neighborhood and the community. In this case, the Plan Commission kind of discussed this and felt that, it's basically from 4 unrelated to 2 unrelated. It's not a big change from that regard, but it does have the ability to impact the neighborhood in what they considered a potentially negative way, so that's why they recommend denial. Staff I'm coming out kind of neutral on this because I remember when the council adopted that overlay designation, at least at that time, there was kind of a consensus that the property owner should have the ability to get out of that designation or have that removed at that time. But I've had conversation with several of the property owners in that area, and I think one thing that I think is a different situation now than was present when this property was initially designated was the general market regarding rental housing in Platteville is quite a bit different. We've got a lot of vacancies now that we didn't have previously, so I don't think there's quite the demand for new rental housing in Platteville now than we had previously, so I think that should be taken into consideration in your request. The other thing I should mention is we did receive a petition signed by the residents of that neighborhood against the rezoning request. So according to the rules, that forces a supermajority vote of the council is required in order for the zoning change to be approved. So if we had all 7 here, that would mean 6.
And
It's-
Brian,
It is 3/4 of the members voting.
3/4 of the members voting.
Right.
So that would mean tonight, it would mean 3,
Members.
4.
4.
So tonight, it would mean that 4 people would have to vote in favor of rezoning in order for it to pass. Is that correct?
That's, yeah, I just looked it up in the state statute, and such amendment shall not become effective except by the favorable vote of 3/4 of the members of the council voting on the proposed change.
Right.
You know, if they meant by
Oh,
a
it would take 4 out of 5 tonight.
I think that's right.
Okay. All right. Any questions from council members of staff? Otherwise, we're going to move into public statements in favor. I have no slips of anybody who's registered in favor. Is there, and we have a process for registering. All right, I then would take, anybody, public statements in favor? Okay, public statements against, and before I go to the public statements against, I have had several people register against but not want to speak. And so Jan, I want to read those into the record. So registering against this but not wanting to speak, Tom Lindahl, Joyce Clark, Charles Clark, Jan Weber, Jean Weber, Goldie Melville, Melody Coppen, Brian Wagner, Richard Rundle, Pam Punzak, Larry Karowski, Sylvia Karowski, Tom Osting, Deb Osting, Evelyn Dewsbury, Tim Dice, and Barb Dice. I believe I have all of the people who registered but did not want to speak. Additionally, I have 3 people who have registered against and would like to speak. So we'll start, and the 3 are John Dewsbury, Rachel Culbertson, and Tanya Wagner. So we'll start with John. Oh, there it is.
Gosh, I haven't been up here for a while, so it feels a little bit strange to come back to this territory. Anyway, John Dewsbury and my wife Evelyn, 40 Preston Drive here in Platteville. Numerous reasonable statements were presented at the April 14th council meeting opposing, and I underline, opposing rezoning and also opposing removing the overlay on 1205 Union Street property. Let us proceed promptly retaining R1 zoning and the overlay district on 1205 Union Street property. This is positive for the West Side neighborhood and also the city of Platteville. Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rachel Culbertson.
My name is Rachel Culbertson, and I live with my husband Ken and our 10 and 9-year-old children at 1165 West Hill Avenue. I spoke at the last council meeting, and I'm here tonight to express again our family's opposition to the rezoning request currently being considered. Why, when I have a family at home, have I chosen to come to a third evening meeting in 4 weeks' time? Simply put, because I have a family at home. I will work and fight for what is best for my family and home, and that involves my neighborhood. As I think you will remember, 2 weeks ago I stated that one of my main concerns is not with bringing more people into our neighborhood, but with adding 2 or more unrelated persons, individuals, to any one house in our neighborhood. Keeping the limited occupancy residential overlay district intact prevents this from happening. I'm sure you will also recall that I feel the other principal problem with rezoning the property in question is that it would bring a business to our neighborhood. We do not want businesses next door to our families. Neighborhoods are for establishing friendships, not businesses, setting up a home, not shop, and making a difference, not a dollar. Keeping the limited occupancy residential overlay district intact protects these distinctions between neighborhoods and business districts. I have one additional matter for your consideration tonight. What sense does it make to grant a rezoning request to an individual against the desires of the majority of the neighbors when that individual will not even reside in the neighborhood, much less in the house in question? I believe it makes no sense at all to the neighborhood. It only makes sense, spelled C-E-N-T-S, to the individual. Finally, I would like to iterate Goal 2, Objective 2.2 in the Housing Goals and Objectives section of Platteville's Comprehensive Plan, which is to, quote, encourage and support neighborhood groups and others as they may organize regarding issues and concerns specific to the individual neighborhoods, end quote. The West Hill subdivision has organized in the past, as well as now, regarding the issues and concerns specific to our neighborhood, namely establishing and then upholding the limited occupancy residential overlay district as established. Again, I, my family, and my neighbors ask you, in keeping with the comprehensive plan, to encourage and support us in this end, to this end, by denying this rezoning request. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tanya.
Good evening. My name is Tanya Wagner, and I reside at 1155 Union Street. I am here tonight as well in opposition to the request to change the zoning at 1205 Union Street. And I know I spoke last week, and I'll try not to take too much time tonight, but I wanted to just share a few more further thoughts. As elected officials, you have a very difficult job. You need to try and best represent the community members that elected you, but also uphold the city's vision, their policies, and their plans. And so I ask that you keep our wishes in front of you as you vote tonight as well. 2 weeks ago, many people were in the audience, and again tonight, as you can see, we have a very large crowd in opposition to what has been proposed for this address. As you make your decision, we ask that you look at the following items. Approximately 110 neighbors in this area signed the necessary documents to create an overlay district. This was not an easy task for those who organized, but it was something that the neighborhood felt strongly to do. The city's planning commission, as mentioned earlier, voted against this request. The majority of the homeowners adjacent to this property signed a petition opposing this request. Would rezoning this property comply with the city's comprehensive plan? Doesn't sound like it does 100%. What unintended consequences would occur if this request were to be approved? And then finally, as Mr. Punzak stated 2 weeks ago, does the need for student housing outweigh the impact of what this change would be for everyone involved? So I've thought about this a great deal over the past several weeks, and I personally can't justify a single reason why this zoning should be changed. And I sincerely hope that you think about those same aspects as well when you vote tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that is those are the people who have registered either against or to speak against. So now I would take any public statements in general. And again, I've had no registrations, but public statements in general. Otherwise, then we're to council discussion. Any council discussion on this? If there's no council discussion, I would take a motion to close the public hearing.
So move. Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mike and a second by Tom Knoll to close the public hearing. Jan will vote.
Den,
Yes.
Doss.
Yes?
Nall,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Seaboth Wilson. Yes. Motion carries.
And is there any action anyone would like to propose?
I'd like to have a motion. I'd like to make a motion to deny the request to rezone the property to R2, 1 and 2 family residents, and to keep the RLA district in place.
The RLO designation
Yes.
in place. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Den, second by Dr. Killian, to deny the request to rezone the property to R2, 1 and 2 family residential, and to deny the request to remove the RLO designation. Will vote?
Den,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Nall,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Seaboth Wilson. Yes. Motion carries.
Okay, request then is denied. All right, thank you all. And I'd really encourage you to stick around because the next order of business on our agenda is not about council action. We have a student design group here tonight who are going to talk about the project they've done in terms of a traffic study on what we used to call 151, which we now call Business 151. And so I would like to, Howard, are you going to introduce these young folks, or are they going to introduce themselves? Or
They'll introduce themselves.
so I just say stick around and at least see their presentation because it'll be far more interesting, I believe, than perhaps things beyond that. So, plus they need an audience. This is
That's right. Good job.
They'll be traveling 151.
Well, thank you,
and I
Barbara.
invite you to turn around and look at the. They have a beautiful PowerPoint, so I invite you to turn around and take a look so that you can see how this Transcorp Engineering Group
Yep.
proceeded.
Thank you, Barbara. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for providing us with this opportunity to present to you our findings of our speed profile study along Business Highway 151. As Barbara mentioned before, we're all students at UW Platteville and intend to graduate on May 9th of this coming semester. This was our senior design project for the past semester. I'm Jacob Hoagland,
Corey Schrader.
Brittany Thompson.
And Colton Tischer.
and our Transcorp Engineering is our design team. We'll start off here. Look at first our project background, then we'll look at the studies that we completed for this project. We came up with some alternatives, so I'll look at each alternative, the selection criteria we used to rate each alternative, and then the final recommendation. So first things, the project location. The beginning of the project starts in the bottom left of your screen. That's at Pioneer Road East, Business 151 intersection. Travels along Business Highway 151, goes across South Water Street, and terminates at East Side Road, Business Highway 151 intersection near Kmart.
A little bit about where our project started from. Our project stemmed from concerns from the Common Council at a meeting on November 2014 regarding speeds along the corridor, pedestrian safety, as well as noise along the corridor. 3 different entities have jurisdiction over the project corridor, including Grant County, the Township of Platteville, and the City of Platteville. Our objective was to determine the safe speeds within the project corridor in accordance to the 2009 Wisconsin statewide speed management guidelines. Here is a jurisdictional map just kind of showing who has jurisdiction over which sections of this segment. In the yellow on the bottom left is Grant County. In the green just above that is the Township of Platteville. And in red is the City of Platteville. We broke our project up into 3 different segments based on the existing speed limits. In the orange in the bottom left-hand corner is segment 1, which we called the County Township segment, which currently has a speed limit of 40 miles per hour. In blue is segment 2, which we called the restaurant district, that currently has a speed limit of 30 miles per hour. And in red is segment 3, which we called the big box segment. Each of these segments shares predominant features such as two 12-foot driving lanes, as well as 8-foot paved shoulders on both sides of the roadway, with the exception of segment 1, which has a 3-foot paved shoulder on the east side of the roadway and an 8-foot on the west side of the roadway. There are two other important things to note on here: the vertical curves at segment 1 and segment 3. At segment 1, the vertical curve has a max grade of 5.2%, and at segment 3, the vertical curve has a maximum grade of 6.5%. Other geometrics that we looked into was the design speed. It was determined through the most recent WISDOT as-built to be 40 miles per hour throughout the entire project corridor that we studied. We also looked into access density, which is the amount of access points within each segment along the roadway. The highest segment was segment 2 at approximately 38 access points per mile.
All right, so for our project, we completed 4 studies, first being a speed analysis, a crash history study, turning movement data collection, and then we also did pedestrian observations throughout the semester. Our first study is speed analysis. Speeds were collected at 4 locations throughout the corridor. 1 in our segment 1 at One Main Financial, in segment 2 at Uno's Pizzeria, and 2 in segment 3 at Dollar General and Pioneer Ford. These studies were conducted between February 25th and April 7th. And from the data that we collected, we determined the 85th percentile in pace speeds. The 85th percentile speed is the speed at which 85% of all traffic travels at or below. And the pace speed is a 10-mile-an-hour range that encompasses the most frequently traveled speeds. So here we have our results. The 85th percentile speeds range from anywhere from 3 to 8 miles above the posted speed limits. And the pace speed, the 10-mile-an-hour range is there as well. And for the 85th percentile, it's preferred to have the posted speed within 5 miles an hour of the 85th percentile. And it's preferred to have 70% of all vehicles within the pace speed, which in all 4 of these locations was the case.
The next study we did was a crash history study. We collected data from the Platteville Police Department and the Wisconsin Traffic Operations and Safety Laboratory, otherwise known as TOPS. This data was then consolidated, and we analyzed it from 2007 to 2013, which meets the minimum 5-year requirement stipulated in the Wisconsin statewide speed management guidelines. We put together a few different tables, which we'll discuss in the following slides, and then we also have a collision diagram to show you guys. So the first table is total crashes by intersection. So we've got our segment along the left here, the location, which is intersection, and then by year, the total amount of crashes. So over our 7 years, there were 1,205 crashes during this, in this corridor. Point out on East Mineral and South Water, a total of 35 and 24. These 2 intersections alone made up 56% of the total amount of crashes. Coming in after them were Valley Road with 13 and Staley Avenue with 10. And it can be noted that these intersections are both on the outer edge of segment 2, which is where there's a speed change and also a vertical curve. The next table looks at crashes per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. This value kind of helps compare to other numbers, I guess, around the state and nation. It takes your whatever segment length you're looking at, it takes the average annual daily traffic values and the crashes that occurred in there and extrapolates it to the 100 million vehicle miles traveled. So in segment 1, you can see it was a 381 crashes per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. You compare that to the nationals, a little higher. The zeros signify that there were no crashes in that segment for that year. In segment 2, just in 2007, it was below the national average, and the remaining years were all above. And in segment 3, in 2009 and 2010, it was higher than that national average. Now, the national average that we are comparing them to here, that is for all roadway types. So for our segment, our corridor was an urban collector. Urban because it's in the city, not rural. And then collector, there's 3 different functional classes: local, collector, and arterial. Ours is a collector. This national average has all 3 of them. So it can be a little bit lower because of that. The next table looks at crash severity by year. We've got fatal accidents, injury occurred, and property damage only. It can be noted there was no fatal accidents during these 7 years, and injury occurred and property damage were pretty evenly distributed during the years. This last table looks at crash contributing circumstances by intersection. So what was the contributing circumstance for that crash? In yellow, we've got the speed and pedestrian involved. You can see what each one means down here on the bottom left. Pedestrian involved, there were 0 during these 7 years. Speed related, there was only 3. We can also note that at East Mineral, there was a total of 17 failure to yields. And then we contribute that to poor geometric design at that intersection. The next is a collision diagram. So we're done with the tables, but the collision diagram just helps us kind of see if there's any patterns occurring at each intersection. This is at Valley Road and Business 151. We saw the most reoccurring crash or collision types. This next slide will help zoom in here. So in the legend here down below, these 2 little arrows lined up is rear end collisions. Of the 13 accidents at Valley Road, 12 of them were rear end collisions. If we go back 2 slides, so we've got Valley Road here. 8 of the 13 were due to inattentive driving, and 3 of these 13 2 of them were speed related. 2 of the 13.
Another study that was performed were called turning movement counts. This is basically just sitting at an intersection and counting the vehicles that go from or come from any direction in their turning movement. The equipment we used was the JMAR traffic data collector. This equipment tracks the volumes at an intersection during peak hours on typical traffic days. A typical traffic day is either a Tuesday, Wednesday, or a Thursday, and the time frames where these counts were performed were in the morning peak hours from 6:30 to 8:30 a.m. and the afternoon peak hours from 3:30 to 5:30 p.m. The intersections that were studied were chosen by volume, crash frequency, and possible concern based on geometry. And the intersections that we studied were Pioneer Road East, South Chestnut Street, Staley Avenue, South Water Street, Valley Road, Phillips Road, and East Side Road. The volumes gathered from those intersections were then analyzed in the traffic analysis software called Synchro 8. This software forecasts the changes in key factors when the speed limit is changed in our case. The volumes that were used in those turning movement counts were then input into the software. And just for an example, this is what the software would look like. This is Water and Business 151. 3 speed limit scenarios were analyzed at 25, which is lower, 30, which is the current speed, and 35, which would be raised. We can note that there's no changes in level of service, volume to capacity ratio, and the intersection delay times at either at Water or East Side Road.
The final study that we completed was a pedestrian observation study. Due to the project study period running from January to March, weather was obviously a constraint in determining the amount of pedestrian movements. Observations were made during the turning movement counts and radar studies, as well as periodically throughout the study period as we were driving through and being within the project area. A total of 31 pedestrians were counted while the temperatures were below freezing. This was in February, within a 2-week span, 31 pedestrians within a 2-week span. When temperatures did warm up in March, we did a 3-hour observation at near Staley Avenue, which is right here on this map. This is McDonald's right there, just as a reference. During this study, a total of 10 pedestrians per hour were observed. With these observations, pedestrian movements were determined to be low. Currently, there is only sidewalk along the corridor between Ellen Street and Virgin Avenue, which is in front of the newly constructed Anytime Fitness. There are sidewalks along most of the intersecting roads of Business 151. However, they all terminate once they get to Business 151. There is also a trail the Roundtree Branch Trail that runs along our project corridor. This trail runs behind the businesses within the restaurant district. And it is also important to note that this trail is not maintained in the winter, so no snow removal, and it is mostly unpaved. There are two different projects that could potentially impact the amount of pedestrians within this corridor. The first being the Roundtree Branch Trail improvements, and the second being the proposed bus routes that could positively or negatively impact the pedestrians. Here is a map of the proposed bus routes. This map is actually the map at the time when we were studying it. It has since updated, which will be on the next slide, but this is what we used in our analysis. Currently, as the map on the left-hand side, the stops that are along our project segment are noted in orange on the left-hand map. This route is only run from 1 p.m. to 11 p.m. on Saturdays. There are two stops, the first being near the Platteville Chamber of Commerce, which is in the restaurant district, and the second in segment 3, which is at Pioneer Lanes Bowling Alley. And then the proposed would have 4 different stops within our segment, one in the County Township segment, 2 within the restaurant district, and 1 within the big box segment. Here's the most recent updated map that we found, and this would be during the evening academic year routes. The 4 stops would be, 3 of the stops would be along the restaurant district, and 1 would be near Pioneer Lanes, which is in the big box segment.
So using the data that we collected, we came up with 4 alternatives to consider initially. Alternative 1 would be a no change alternative, so the speed limits would remain as they currently are. Alternative 2, to increase all speed limits by 5 miles an hour. Alternative 3, to decrease all speed limits by 5 miles an hour. And alternative 4 would consist of breaking segment 3, the big box segment, into 2 segments, 3A and 3B, which I'll show you a picture of later. Excuse me. Alternative 1, the no change. The pros of this is that the current speeds are deemed safe for pedestrians and bicyclists, and motorists are used to these speeds. Negatives of this is that it doesn't address the crash history that we found to be a concern at Valley Road, and the current posted speeds are lower than the 85th percentile speeds that I discussed earlier. This is a picture of what this alternative would look like, so nothing would be changing. Segment 1 and 3 are still 40 miles an hour, and segment 2, 30 miles an hour. Alternative 2, increasing all speed limits. This accurately reflects the 85th percentile speeds that we determined, and is also the recommended speeds by the Federal Highway Assessment Tool US Limits 2. And this assessment tool, you essentially enter in geometrics, traffic volumes, and crash data, and it provides you with a recommended speed. However, this alternative was eliminated right away because the speeds in segment 1 and 3 would become 45 miles an hour, which are both above the design speed of 40 miles an hour. Alternative 3, lowering all speed limits. This would improve pedestrian safety, and it does meet the design speed of the corridor, but this would put the posted speed significantly lower than the 85th percentile speeds that we determined. And again, here's a picture of what this alternative would look like. The same segments, just in segment 1 and 3 would become 35 miles an hour, and segment 2, 25 miles an hour. Alternative 4, as I mentioned, was breaking segment 3 into 3A and 3B, as this picture shows. So on the left-hand side here by Valley Road, that currently changes to 40 miles an hour right there. We would propose in this alternative to keep that 30 miles an hour up that hill past the Dollar General to the substation right there, and then have it continue as 40 miles an hour as it currently is out to East Side Road. This addresses the crash history that we found at Valley Road, and these speeds are still considered safe for pedestrians and bicyclists. However, the posted speed limits would be lower than the 85th percentile speeds. And here's a full picture of what alternative 4 would look like. So segment 1 and 2 would still remain the same as the current posted speeds. It would just be segment 3 here that would be different.
In order to form the following recommendation, 4 selection criteria were followed by us: speed compliance, crash severity, pedestrian safety, and geometrics. It's important to note that as per the 2009 Wisconsin statewide speed management guidelines, future concerns that have not previously occurred are not to be taken into consideration.
After analyzing the previous selection criteria, we recommend implementing alternative 4, which is the segment 3A, 3B breakdown. Regardless of which alternative is selected, we would also recommend that post-mounted radar speed signs be installed on either end of the restaurant district where there's a speed decrease. These electronic signs are an effective way to remind motorists of their traveling speed in relation to the posted speed limit. We also contacted a vendor, and they gave us a budgetary quote for these as $5,000 per solar-mounted or solar-powered post-mounted radar speed sign. We would also recommend that there is continual monitoring of the pedestrian activity due to the proposed bus route and how that affects it. And we'd also promote the use of the Roundtree Branch Trail for pedestrian and bike movements.
And just as a reminder of what alternative 4 looked like here, it would be 40 miles an hour in segment 1 as is. And then as you enter the restaurant district, segment 2 from the west, there would be a post-mounted radar speed sign here to remind you of your speed. It would continue as 30 miles an hour through the current restaurant district and up the hill past the Dollar General, and then go back to 40 miles an hour as it currently is out to Pioneer Road East. And there would also be another post-mounted radar speed sign entering the restaurant district from the east.
Lastly, we would like to give a special thanks to the people and departments that are listed on this slide that have helped us make this project possible throughout the entire semester.
That is all that we have for our presentation, but we would welcome any questions that you might have at this time.
Questions? Mike, anything to say?
No, I don't. Very, very thorough. And I like the idea that you also showed that no change was pretty good also. And we have never had a fatality.
Amy?
No, this was wonderful. Thank you for your hard work. It's a really professional quality product.
Thank you.
Ken? Any questions?
Thank you.
I want to give you a special thanks. That is really interesting, and I know you worked hard on it, and thank you very much from the community. I think we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And congratulations on your graduations, and the best to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would also mention that they all have jobs and are gainfully employed upon graduation.
That's even
And
better
they all
yet.
tonight remembered that the day after graduation is Mother's Day, so they'll all be prepared for that too. In addition to recognizing Jacob, Corey, Brittany, and Colton, I would like to recognize one of their faculty advisors who's in the audience tonight, Dr. Fields.
Both are.
Are they both? Oh, Sam, you snuck in. I didn't see you. Sorry. But I'd like to recognize their faculty advisors also. So thank you. This is an excellent example of a project where the city and students have worked together and the university, and we really appreciate all you've done. So thank you very much, and I think they deserve a hand. So Howard, I'm assuming that this recommendation comes back to you and that then you will bring forth any desired action to the council. Would you like
Correct.
input on that? Okay.
Yeah, it'll be a future action for the council at some point in time.
Okay, good. And now, all those people who were going to leave before this wonderful presentation, you can still stay. We welcome you to stay, but I'm certainly glad that you remained. The next item on our agenda is consideration of the consent calendar. The following items may be approved on a single motion and vote due to their routine nature or previous discussion. Please indicate if you would prefer separate discussion and action. We have minutes from 3 meetings, the April 9th special meeting, the April 14th regular meeting, and the April 21st organizational meeting. We have payment of bills, appointments to boards and committees. I have some tonight that I will make for Council President Nichols. She asked me to please appoint Tom Nelson and Mary Miller to the Plan Commission, their terms to begin May 1. I will also make appointments to the Board of Review, 2 vacancies that exist. Those appointments are Dave Jones and Dick Bonin. I would mention to folks that there are lots of openings on boards and commissions, and we would welcome new applicants for those. So those are the appointments to boards and commissions. We have licenses tonight, 1 and 2 year licenses, and I need to find those. Joyce, do I need to read those in, Jan? No? Okay, so just 1 and 2 year operators licenses, and then we have permits for street closing, St. Augie's University Parish, on April 29th from noon to midnight for an event. What's your pleasure?
I so move we accept the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mike and a second by Ken to accept the consent calendar as published. We'll vote.
Den,
Yes?
Doss,
Yes?
Nall,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Seaboth Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, next, citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, if any. And I do not believe we have any of those. Any other items that I have here are about future agenda items. I would make one I guess I would make one observation, and thank you. Tonight is the final meeting of our current city manager, Mr. Larry Berkey. And I want to extend thanks on behalf of the council and the city to you, Larry. And following our hopefully short meeting, we do have a little cake that we will share. So thank you, Larry, and we wish you well as you move along in your career. Okay, reports, committee reports. Platteville Museum Board, Barb is not here, but I understand that we have a new museum director. Can we announce that, Larry? We don't have a new museum director.
We do.
We
She
do have
starts
a-
June 1st. Unfortunately, we can't announce yet. I would prefer if she were here.
That
to
would be
introduce her.
fine,
Yep.
okay. I will say that the current museum director is retiring effective May the 5th.
Yes.
And I believe that's 40, is it 40 years to the day
Yes.
that he was hired? So I guess he chose his retirement date as carefully as he chose his employment date, or something like that. I believe that afternoon there is a reception at the museum, and so I would encourage people to stop at the Mining and Rollo Jameson Museum, which, by the way, is one of the 10 featured places, kind of off the beaten path places in Wisconsin. The top 2 are the Potosi Brewery and the Platteville Mining and Rollo Jameson Museums. I thought that was very interesting today. Airport Commission, I have nothing to add. Library Board, Eileen is not here. Water and Sewer Commission,
No addition.
no additions. Parks, Forestry, and Recreation,
No addition.
Historic Preservation Commission,
No addition.
and Community Safe Routes.
No addition.
Okay, the other reports were in our packet, Department Progress Reports, any questions on any of those? Okay, we'll move on to the action items then. The first action item we have tonight is the election of a Plan Commission member. And that is, just as it says it is, it's the election, one member, the city council president serves on the Plan Commission, and the council elects one additional member. So I would indicate that nominations are open for a Plan Commission member.
I nominate Mike Den.
Do we need seconds?
No.
No. Any
Okay.
other nominations?
Do we hear any other nominations? Do we hear any motions then?
Somebody else make it. I'm not gonna make it.
You accept?
Yes.
Then I will motion
Thank you.
to nominate or elect Mike Den to the Plan Commission.
I'll second, if they
Okay.
needs a second.
We'll vote?
Den,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Nall,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Seaboth Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the appointment of Dwayne Borgen as acting city manager, effective, I believe, 5/2/2015.
We need a motion for that?
We do.
I so move that we have Dwayne be our our temporary city manager.
Acting city manager.
Acting city manager, excuse me.
With all the rights and responsibilities
With all the
thereof.
rights and responsibility of said office.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to appoint Dwayne as acting city manager effective May 2nd. We'll vote.
Den,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Nall,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Seaboth Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next on our agenda is our HIPAA update. This is something we look forward to. Right, Brian? Because it's like 900 pages long, and we all have read it thoroughly.
As much as I look forward to rewriting them. The current plan that was written in 2010, revised in 2012, there were several changes with the high-tech, or the change in the high-tech statute coming on board as being part of HIPAA, so the policy was rewritten, and that is what is brought to approve.
So this is electronic protected health information. So
Correct.
this now, before they just assumed it was paper, now they've extended this into electronic protection.
Correct. More so than what it was before.
Okay. I believe I could hear a motion unless somebody has questions about this.
No, I
Okay.
saw how thick it was, and after the first couple of pages, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the HIPAA update
Okay.
as requested.
Approve the HIPAA policies for the city and Platteville EMS.
Second that motion.
And I have a second from Ken. We'll vote.
Den,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Nall,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Seaboth Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Brian. And we're happy that you read that and keep track of it because it's very detailed. Okay, contract 415, weed and grass mowing. Howard?
Yes. This is a contract that allows the city to enforce its tall grass ordinance. The ordinance says lawns cannot be more than 8 inches high. If the staff receives a complaint, it's investigated, and if verified, we mail a notice to the owner, and the owner has 5 days to mow the lawn, or we will mow it and bill the cost to the owner. Now, what we have here is our standard contract for this. The only bidder that we had was by Grass Pro Lawn Care LLC. Their bid was $100 per hour, or $100 minimum for base bid number 1, large rural type areas. Generally those unmanaged areas that are an acre or more in size, and then $100 per hour, or $100 minimum for our base bid 2, which are isolated patches and residential lawns. Just to remind you, we did in fact contact 4 contractors before the day of the bid to remind them of the bid date, but we did receive only the 1 bid. Last year, the prices were $65 and $35 for the respective bid. In addition to the contractor's cost of service, there is a $40 administration fee. Last time, when we had this for information, staff was asked whether the contractor would be willing to clean up grass clippings after the mowing. The contractor said that he would, as long as it was added to the time required to complete the job. So if he ends up having to take 2 hours to complete a residential lawn because he's mowing it and cleaning up the clippings, then the contractor's fee would be $200. So at this point, staff recommends the council award contract 4-15, weed and grass mowing to Grass Pro Lawn Care at the above stated bid prices, and I recommend that the motion include specific instructions whether you want the contractor to be required to clean up the grass clippings.
Howard, last time when we had this discussion, I might not have made my information or my comments clear. with the exorbitant price that this contractor wants to charge, I feel that his cleanup should be included in that price, not be in addition to. And I guess I didn't state that very clearly.
Well,
Mike,
the,
since this is an hourly charge, I don't know how, I mean, if you spend an hour or if you spend two, whether you're cleaning up, or this is a by hour charge, not a by lawn charge.
Okay, but I guess I can say this because I'm not involved with it anymore. I've been involved in doing these contracts a lot for the city in the past. And when we mowed, we also cleaned up, and that was just all part of the charge. It wasn't an additional charge to clean up the mess that the guy mowing makes. But, I mean, that was just from my standpoint, and I know how it was done in the past. That's why, and we charged a lot less back in those days. So this guy wants a tremendous amount of money, because folks, how many of you want your yard mowed for $140 for just 1 hour?
Well,
Or
hopefully.
minimum, it's a minimum.
I mean, hopefully people will mow their yard.
I think it's a great idea, because now it'll make them do it, I hope.
Hope so.
But
But I mean, if,
do you have
I
an
mean,
opinion for me, Howard, on the cleanup portion of it? As far as
Oh.
staff recommendation, thought?
it doesn't, I don't have an opinion either way, whether it should be on there or not. If you believe that it's necessary, I'm just asking that you include it in the motion. But you need to understand that as
Exactly.
Council President Dawes said here, if it takes more than an hour, they're gonna charge the hourly price.
Okay. I just know what some of those yards would look like if I was a neighbor next door and had all the dead grass laying around and all the insects coming in and like to make a mess, and you have to sit there and look at it.
well, it's an hourly charge. It's not a by lawn charge or a by square footage charge.
But there's a minimum.
I understand. So Ken, do you have a,
Couple things. One, this will be on a complaint basis according to the first paragraph. Which neighbors will be having to call into the city to get this enforced.
Correct.
And the next thing is 1, 2, 3, the fourth line, it says, so that the lawn is no more than 6 inches high. Well, to me, that's too tall to leave it at. I would say it should be 3 inches. So what's your comment on that? Are you talking about something which is not a lawn that is to be left at no more than 6 inches? A lawn, to me, should be back down about 3.
It will depend on where the contractor sets the deck on the machine. What we're saying in our contract with them is that when they're done, the grass can be no more than 6 inches high when they're done. And that's the way that it's been for many, many years. This is nothing new.
but it can be mowed already when it was 8 inches high, so you're just gonna take off the top
It's gonna
2
take
inches.
off a couple inches, that's it.
Well, traditionally, what ends up happening is we get a complaint and it's definitely more than 8 inches by the time we get the complaint, and then we have another 5 days where the lawn grows in addition, between the time that we inspect it and send out the notice and the time we send the contractor out. So generally, if it hasn't been mowed, it's a pretty tall at that point. So it'll be a big difference.
It'll be a big difference, but you're not making it like a city lawn. It still could be 6 inches tall.
Normally, commercial lawn mowers establish growth of 3 inches on commercial lawns. When we mow commercially all over the place, in Iowa, in Wisconsin, everywhere, it's established at 3 inches. That's a standard lawn.
Understood.
Howard, was this bid out as mowing to 6 inches?
Yes.
So it would take a different bid proposal?
I would have to ask the contractor to see what his deck height was set at, would he be set at for this contract.
They're easily adjusted, so it's,
I understand, but Mike, we set when the RFP was set out, it was said that this is
Well,
the height it
granted, I
was going to be.
understand that. You have
And
to make some
so
changes.
I mean, it would take changes, which means that then it's a different RFP and we would have to send it out again.
Exactly, I understand.
So I would ask, I mean, I'm guessing that most contractors aren't resetting their deck just to make it 6 inches. So they're probably gonna mow it at 3 anyhow. And then maybe next
So-
year when we rebid, we can make it 3.
Okay.
Can we try and remember to do that collectively?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Howard. Does that seem good, Mike?
Well,
I
that's
do
fine,
have a
because
question,
What will
Howard.
happen is, if you don't do that, they'll be going back there the next week.
Well, that's right. Okay, Tom's question?
You said you send out notices. How are those notices sent?
Water bill.
They're sent by US mail, and this year we have in bold lettering just the warning about the price of the service, so that the owner knows what he or she is getting.
So,
usually
Tom,
goes out
was,
with the water
just,
bill,
Mike,
doesn't it?
please, was your question relative to how did we get bids, or was your question relative to
Relative to
our
how we
people-
deliver notices to the landowners. I know this sounds a little ridiculous. However, since the post office has changed its delivery system, and now everything, just last year, things used to go to Madison, and in most cases, you would have 1-day delivery back to Platteville. Now that has changed. You're looking at 2 to 3 days delivery. Some cases, if you're looking for delivery outside the zip codes of 535, 537, 538, 539, and 520, you could be looking as many as 5 to 7 days. Now, I'm not trying to be critical of what we're doing. I just want us to understand, maybe we ought to look at a different method of notification. Because one of the things that's going to come up is somebody's going to say, oh, well, I didn't get this until a week after you sent it out. How am I supposed to, you already sent somebody out to mow the lawn, and you're charging me. And I don't think that's correct. I think what we need to do is to take a look if there's a method of delivery, contacting owners in some other means. Now, that may mean that the initial notice goes out by mail. But I think the initial notice, the first one, should be allowed to have a time period in which we know when they get delivery.
All right.
I know that's
No, I understand. So, Howard, I would suggest, I mean, this is not something we're gonna settle tonight, but I would suggest you have a conversation with our local postmaster and determine what the delivery, what the likely delivery is. Also determine if the, I have been told if the mailing is done inside the post office into a local box, it doesn't go out of town. If you could verify some of that so that we are sensitive to the fact, I understand what Tom is saying, delivery of the post office has changed, and so we probably should be sensitive to the new timelines. And we probably should also include some kind of option for people to give us an alternative way to contact them, maybe by email or something. So,
Thank you.
I mean, that's okay, but I mean, that doesn't really affect this contract. We're gonna-
No.
Howard,
I just wanted to bring that to the attention
Right.
because
Thank you.
we're gonna have that situation
And
arise, no doubt.
yeah, I assume that's going to be, particularly with landowners that are away.
I think being part of the community and being part of an urban area, you should know you have to mow your lawn.
I do
For
too.
us to send a letter to remind somebody, hey, by the way, you have to mow your lawn, it seems pretty generous on behalf of the city to
Does.
inform people.
I agree.
Howard, quick question. Didn't we in the past, in the spring of the year, just send out a reminder, a flyer that went in the water bill to remind people about what our laws were for, just like we did for snow removal? Or is that not correct?
I believe that notices went out in the local paper and in the city's newsletter and on our website and places like that. So I would have to double check. I think we may have also inserted that in the water bills. I don't remember right offhand, but we do in fact try to put notice in many different ways to people to remind them of the ordinance.
And just like Larry has said, if you're living in an urban area with a lawn, then you're living in an urban area with a lawn. You're not living in the country with a hayfield. All right, do I hear action on this, please?
Also move to approve.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right.
What does the motion include?
The motion includes awarding contract 415 weed and grass mowing to Grass Pro Lawn Care LLC at a bid price of $100 per hour or $100 minimum for base bid 1 and $100 per hour or $100 minimum for base bid 2. That's your motion, Tom?
Yes, it is.
How about the
that's your
part
second.
about cleanup of grass clippings?
Tom did not include anything in his motion about cleanup of grass clippings.
That is correct.
I would amend the motion to include cleanup of grass clippings.
We have a motion to amend the motion. Is there a second?
I'll give you a second.
Okay, we first vote on the amendment. The amendment is to clean up the grass, to include that the contractor clean up the grass clippings after mowing. We'll vote.
Den,
Yes.
Doss,
No.
Nall,
No.
Killian,
Yes.
Seaboth William,
No,
Wilson,
no.
sorry.
All right, that
Motion
amendment failed. We will now vote on the original motion, which was contract 415, weed and grass mowing, as I stated before.
Den,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes?
Nall,
Yes.
Killian,
No.
Seaboth Wilson,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, next on our agenda is contract 515. This is sidewalk repair.
Thank you.
Howard, this one's
Yes.
yours too.
Okay, annually, we have a project to repair sidewalk areas throughout the city. We have 2 bids from this. One is for the actual replacement of the sidewalks themselves. The low bidder is J&T Concrete Construction with a bid of $28,289.85. The low and only bidder for grinding of the sidewalk trip hazards is Sidewalk Savers LLC at $7,056. And I recommend that we award the contract to those contractors.
Okay, questions on this contract? Howard, I'm assuming that in the bid, it tells the amount. I mean, the length or the amount. I see it's 168 grinds that we're getting for $7,056. But how much sidewalk repair? I mean, is that in feet or is that in?
We do that in square feet.
Okay.
I would
You
have to
didn't
get.
put it in, but you
I
have
didn't
that in the,
It's in the contract. It's
Okay.
in square feet based on whether it's 4-inch or 6-inch thick.
okay. Any other
I have a
questions?
motion.
Okay,
I have a motion to accept the bid from Loungers for $32,030.98 for sidewalk repair, and to accept the bid for $7,056 for Sidewalk Savers for the grinding.
Clarification, I don't believe that's legal.
Well, I mean,
Yes,
you
it
can
is
make
on
the
these
motion,
bids.
but the responsibility of the council is to award this contract to the lowest responsive bidder. So you gotta have a basis for doing something else besides that.
Okay, and since there's no federal money, no state money being involved whatsoever, you don't have to take the lowest bid, okay?
I'm reciting to you what state law says,
Right.
anything to do with federal government
Okay,
or
but-
federal money. The state
okay.
law says award public construction contracts to the lowest responsible bidder,
Okay,
period.
but it's not illegal to do it the other way.
You know, it just violates the direction of state law.
Yeah.
So
but
we could
anyway,
Is it
we
legal?
could get sued over
The
it.
reason being, okay,
I don't
folks,
think we would, but
The reason being is Lolingers live in the city. They raise their families here, they pay taxes here on their business and everything else. These other people don't, you know, I don't know where they spend any money here, but they're not from Platteville.
So question for
So this-
Brian.
So we have a motion, we have no second.
It's against the law to award contracts based on preference to residents.
But we've had discussion before, right, Brian?
And I've said the
And-
same thing before.
And when we looked it up, it said that if state grant money, state money, federal money is involved, you have to take the lowest bid. It
I have
doesn't
no
say that
idea
here.
what you're talking about.
Okay, we'll go look it up again, but you can help me.
It's not necessary.
Okay.
Well, to me, the key is responsible, so if Mike can say something about the lowest bidder not being responsible, then that could be a reason.
Right, but then if you start saying that they're not responsible, that's essentially saying they're not qualified.
That's true.
Side note,
This may not be true here, but that's the reason. We've done it
Well,
before.
that's what I'm saying. You have to have some reason, Ken.
That's right.
I just gave one.
I'll second the motion.
That we award to Lowinger
Yes.
and to Sidewalk Savers. Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll vote.
Den,
Yes.
Doss,
No.
Null,
No.
Killian,
Yes.
Seaboth Wilson,
no.
motion fails.
Question for Brian. I think Mike brings up a very good point that we do want to support local businesses. I've seen communities before that pass some sort of ordinance or policy that says in certain circumstances we prefer local bidders. Is that something the city could ever consider doing?
Not for these kind of contracts, no. No.
Thank you.
All right, do we have a motion
Disagree.
on the sidewalk repair?
I have a motion that I would like to accept the bid by J&T Concrete out of Livingston for $28,289.85. That is only for the bid for the repair of sidewalks,
Not for grinding.
or not for grinding.
So you didn't include sidewalk savers in your motion?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Do I have a second to that motion? Appears that motion is dying for lack of a second. Do we have another motion?
I'll make a motion that we award contract 515 sidewalk repair to J&T Concrete Construction with a bid of $28,289.58 and award the grinding of sidewalk to Trip Hazards to Sidewalk Saver LLC for a maximum of $7,056.
Do I have a second?
I'm sorry.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll vote.
I have a question.
Oh, question.
Has DPW worked with these people before and been satisfied with their work as far as the J&T concrete?
Yes, they were the bidders last year and they performed well.
And Sidewalk Savers was the bid?
Sidewalk Savers, I can't remember whether they were last year or the year before, but they've also performed grinding here.
Howard,
done
when
a
they
good job.
repaired the sidewalks, when they had the patch fill in, did they use re-rod to connect the other existing sidewalks so we don't have movement when spring and fall?
That's not what we have in our contract.
Really?
I don't prefer that because of, I would prefer that we have the sidewalk float a little bit, so that in the future, if we need to repair them, that we're not tearing out adjacent squares of concrete when we pull them out.
So we just spend more money grinding than when they move with the frost and stuff up and down, right?
All right. We have a motion and a second. We'll vote.
Den,
No?
Doss,
Yes.
Null,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Seaboth Wilson,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, next on our agenda is Resolution 1504. This is to eliminate the one-year lapse between board terms for the Platteville Housing Authority. And Marilyn Gottschalk is in the audience tonight and has volunteered to speak if necessary. But we'll, this basically, who brought this forward? Larry, you wanna? Jennifer did, but she's not here. Questions on this? This basically says, many of our boards, you have to be off a year in order to serve. We have looked at state statute. It is legal for people to serve terms without a term off. In this particular housing authority, what they do is kind of complex, and it's hard to get people to understand it. And until they understand it and then they have to get off, it just doesn't work well.
My question would be, was there any number of terms mentioned as to what the maximum might be? Or would it be indefinite?
Actually, state statute governs the housing authorities, and in state statute, there is no statutory limit.
So you could be there 20 years?
Just like you could
if
be
you
a
were
state senator for 20
Okay,
years.
appointed every 5 years.
Or 50 years.
Appointed
Or,
every 5
yeah,
years.
or until
Okay.
you're 95. Okay, any other questions? Do I hear a motion?
Also move.
Okay, we have a motion by Tom and a second by Ken to approve Resolution 1504, eliminating the one-year lapse between board terms for the Platteville Housing Authority. We'll vote.
Den,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes?
Nall,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Seaboth Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, next on our agenda is sidewalk waiver for 1471 Progressive Parkway. And we do have, let's see, Howard, is that, no, Joe. That's you, right?
I'll take that one. 1741 Progressive Parkway is a proposed location for a Sherwin-Williams store. As part of our zoning ordinance, there's a requirement that says if there's no sidewalks present on a property that's proposed for commercial development, it should be installed along the frontage of the street as part of that development. The ordinance also says, however, that a waiver to that requirement can be approved by the council if there are no connecting sidewalks present or planned, or there's determined there's not a need for a sidewalk at that location. However, the ordinance also says that if it's not required as part of that development, the council maintains the right to have the sidewalk installed at a future date and assess the property owner for those costs. In this particular case, the property has two street frontages. It fronts on Progressive Parkway and also on Business Highway 151. Currently, there is no sidewalk present on either of those frontages or on adjacent properties on either of those frontages. There is sidewalk along Progressive Parkway on the other side of the street, and there will be sidewalk provided on the adjacent property to the east when the McDonald's development occurs. So the developer is proposing a sidewalk be installed along Progressive Parkway, which would connect to that McDonald's sidewalk and across the street to the sidewalk on the other side of Progressive Parkway. However, there is no sidewalks planned or existing on Business Highway 151, and there are no street allowances made at the intersections for pedestrian crossings at either of the intersections on either side of this general area. So they would prefer not to provide sidewalks along Business Highway 151. So they're asking for that waiver be approved by the council. The Planning Commission considered this request at their April 6th meeting and recommended approval of the waiver. So it would allow, they would provide the sidewalk on Progressive Parkway, but not Business Highway 151 as requested. Staff would agree with that recommendation, as I mentioned, with the understanding that in the future that sidewalk may be installed at the property owner's expense. Any questions?
Questions?
I have a motion.
Nope. We have a person in the audience who has asked to speak.
Okay.
And so Christina Fields.
Hello, my name is Christina Fields. I live at 945 7th Avenue. I'm also the chair of the Community Safe Routes Committee. And the task of the Community Safe Routes Committee is to look at pedestrian connectivity within the city when projects are planned, and make sure that we provide that pedestrian connectivity. And we do the same thing for cycling. So we do it within commercial plans, residential areas connecting homes to schools, and we're the same group that worked with the Safe Routes to School plan. So as part of the Community Safe Routes Committee, we do look at site plans. And so we've been looking at a variety of different site plans along Business 151, Dunkin' Donuts, Anytime Fitness, Culver's, Sherwin-Williams. Our committee did not get a chance to look at the McDonald's site plan, unfortunately. But, and we've also looked recently at the new auto parts store that's on the northeast corner of Business 151 and Mineral. And so what our committee would like council to consider is that this corridor is really a corridor waiting for pedestrian accommodations and that connectivity. You saw that with the student presentation, they certainly, when I am out there, when they were out there, the increase in pedestrian activity in that excuse me, the corridor is high. And so we would like council to consider providing that the sidewalks along Business 151. And so when we look back and reflect on the Anytime Fitness property, that was one that came up, and there was a proposed waiver for that property. And when we were looking at it, we came to council and recommended to council that this connects to a neighborhood, it's connected to businesses, and so council approved the installation of that sidewalk. And since that time, we've had several people comment positively on the installation of that sidewalk, that we're starting to provide that connectivity. And so we would like council to consider that when these new parcels come in, that instead of waiving them, we acknowledge that there currently isn't a complete corridor along Business 151 but for pedestrians, but there would be if we would start to install them. And so as we see these parcels come in place, I think it's a really good idea. Why not have the property owners install the sidewalk with their construction? It's a lot cheaper to do so. It takes the burden off the city to have to trigger it later on, and it starts to provide that connectivity one spot at a time. When you look at the Sherwin-Williams store, the front door is actually on Business 151, and that's not the case with the other businesses. So we have some on one side, some on the other. We really want to find a way to provide consistent, easy pedestrian connectivity between businesses, and it just seems like a good idea with this corridor, as these parcels are coming in place, to include the sidewalk along that corridor on Business 151. So we just wanted to provide that thought for you. That's really where our committee is focusing a lot of attention, because this is where we're seeing the site plans. And we would appreciate you considering that important corridor for pedestrians.
I have a question. So now the sidewalk goes to East Side Road and Mineral Street, correct? And then how much length is left from the stoplight at Mineral Street to the properties?
Well, going to the east?
Going to the east?
Yep, so there's a new site plan in for that auto parts store, and they have proposed, they've worked with Joe, and we certainly support that proposal of having that sidewalk along Business 151, that corridor, going to the east. So it's starting that sidewalk going in that direction.
So if we put in all the ones that have been waived, plus what's left, how much would be left?
I don't know off the top of my head how many feet that would be, but.
I don't know, Joe. Somebody would need to tell me. There probably wasn't any waive or
At that
granted
time.
at the time for
There
like
might
the
not have been
Rosemary
part of the
Meyer
ordinance at the
property.
time.
It wasn't for that, no.
And I doubt whether when Riley Auto Parts went in, was there any sidewalk consideration?
No, that was prior to the ordinance requirement.
And also when Heartland Credit Union went in, that there was probably no consideration of sidewalk.
But that doesn't matter, right?
Pardon?
That won't matter. You have the authority to.
Right, I
Tell people to put it in.
understand that, but
Okay.
I think Ken's question is, how much is there,
left.
how much is left?
Right.
And I do have a concern about people walking along 151. I mean, I see it every day when I go to work and come home, people walking along that road.
I think one way to look at this is, and I realize it's worst case scenario, but when we were doing the Safe Routes to School plan, or we were meeting with the people in the Dubuque County area about Safe Routes to School plan, it took a death of a child in front of the school for them to get their stuff together and put in the pedestrian accommodations around the school. And so I'd hate to think that with increased pedestrian activity and us continuing to waive these sidewalks along a corridor that's already being used, that we're gonna wait to that point to say, gosh, we should really do something about it. Why not be proactive? We have these developers coming in, they're going to be doing construction anyways. The sidewalk installation, construction at the time just makes sense.
I do have a question. Since there's sidewalk along Progressive Parkway on the north side of this, and there's the potential for sidewalk all the way along, is it less desirable or more desirable, or does it have any influence at all on sidewalks along 151? In other words, perhaps if I were somebody who was sending someone to one of those stores, I would say, stay as far off 151 as you can, and since there's sidewalk on Progressive Parkway, you know, turn in and
Well, that might be the case if you were working solely on the north side of the road. If you wanted to have anything to do with the south side of the road, it doesn't necessarily help you. If our signals had crosswalks, that wouldn't necessarily help you. And then the other thing, if we look at those parcels that haven't been developed yet, having the front door on one side back, you know, one side for McDonald's, front door is on Progressive Parkway. Sherwin-Williams right next door has the front door on Business 151. So, so we're flip-flopping as far as how people are getting even into the building. So if you're a pedestrian, you want to go between Sherwin-Williams and McDonald's, which you know they'll do, should they really go back out to Progressive Parkway and cross and then come back, walking through a parking lot, go up to Progressive Parkway, come back through the parking lot to get to McDonald's when they're like, you know, 50 feet from each other? So just maybe thinking about pedestrian connectivity from our standpoint as a committee is really important when you're laying out a site plan. And so we need to look at it as a corridor instead of one parcel to the next.
One thing about it, though, with the traffic study that those gentlemen and lady served, the reason we haven't had any pedestrian fatalities is because they don't walk along there, okay?
They do.
Well, a little bit. Okay, I talked to one of the business owners out there and I asked him, how many people do you see walking out there? He said, I see maybe 2 or 3 a week, okay? And obviously, all their statistics showed that, okay?
We have to remember that their study, the majority of their study took place during the winter time, and
Oh, but they
so
explained how many people were walking. in the winter
Where
time.
I see people walking is up Mineral Street and then turning at that corner
To
and
go
walking on
to go
out.
east.
I don't see people walking between Mineral Street and Valley Road so
Right.
much.
Right.
I see people walking beyond that. And that's where this location is.
Right, we do have to remember that not all the population does drive, and it is our responsibility. It is taxpayer dollars. It is a way for people to get from A to B is to walk or to bike. And so, you know, if we have seniors who don't drive or can't,
And I
we
would
have
like
children
to
who don't as well.
add to that too, that one thing we don't often talk about, but roads have wear and tear. So the more cars we have on our roads, the more we spend on road maintenance and repair. And so to encourage walking, biking, and other modes of transportation than personal vehicles actually is a way for the city to save money as well.
If we could come up with about $18 million and put it all the way out, it would be great. And I think it would be a great thing. But right now, that's probably not going to happen for a while.
Well, I think this is a good opportunity. The developers are developing their property right now, and the ordinance allows them to install the sidewalk with their property. So this would take the burden off of the cities.
And they still will at a time.
It's still, okay.
I have a motion. I'm sorry, ma'am.
Oh, I
Go
just
ahead.
have one other
Sure, go ahead.
thing. We should also acknowledge the bus route that is in that corridor. Bus routes obviously can't stop at every parcel because it wouldn't do a great job for as far as timing on your bus route. And so the committee looked smartly at what are some good land uses to stop at. And so that means then from those land uses, we need to walk to get to those other places after we get off the bus. And so this corridor is one of those that has that bus route on it. So it would, again, give an opportunity for people to connect from one land use to the other. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, other questions?
Well, I think the staff should look at the amount of distance that is left to be put in the sidewalk and report back to the council.
Well, looking at the amount of distance left to put in the sidewalk is kind of a wide open thing because,
Well, we put the
you know, are
sidewalk, just a minute, we put the sidewalk along Minna Street quite a distance out at the time.
right, it goes all the way to East Side Road.
And it's.
And from East Side Road east, there's not too much sidewalk, although we hear that there's going to be
It's a
some.
sidewalk to nowhere right now, correct?
No, because you can go out East Side Road
To
and
what?
go to the hospital.
Oh, the hospital.
Hey, Ken,
I'd wanna go to the hospital.
I would like to just make one comment. Your comment about going to nowhere, that's where the community of Platteville has to look at. We need to make this available for everyone. I wish we could do what you're asking. I don't think it's gonna be feasible at this time, but I do understand that when somebody says a sidewalk to nowhere, there was a legislator from Milwaukee that said, why are they putting 151 in southwest Wisconsin because it goes nowhere? So don't take something that is nowhere and make it a destination. Make the destination is we're going somewhere and we're going to go ahead.
Well, that's what I'm saying, Tom.
Check that sidewalk out there in the
Let's
wintertime. I
let
have-
one
that-
person at a time, Mike.
I don't want to
I'm
argue.
not saying nowhere,
person
I'm
at a-
saying extend it.
I understand what you're saying.
So I disagree with you.
Okay.
He's not saying a sidewalk to nowhere, he's saying we need to take it to somewhere other than where it's at.
Somewhere.
When the council is ready to put in the sidewalk, it doesn't have to cost the city council money. This is something that is the landowner's responsibility. So you don't have to sit back and save up money to do this, as long as you're willing to ask or to tell those who don't have sidewalk that they need to put it in.
Right.
And so I'm gonna just launch off of that and say, you guys have been hearing me say this the past couple of meetings now, but I have a hard time voting to waive sidewalks, knowing that going back and asking a business owner to install a sidewalk is much more difficult than just asking for it up front. And so in order to be consistent and clear, I am going to vote to not waive this sidewalk because I think we should be installing sidewalks.
First, we need a motion, and I have one.
Well, I think
We
she's
done
she's
discussing?
expressing her opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, any other? All right, the request here, if I get back to the right page. The request is, the Plan Commission recommended approval of the sidewalk waiver as it relates to installation of the sidewalk, not on Progressive Parkway, but as it relates to the sidewalk along 151. Agreeing with, and staff agrees and recommends the city require installation of the sidewalk if sidewalk is installed at the future, that the property owner know that it will be at the property owner's expense. And I'm assuming that means also that there will be space reserved for it. So that's the recommendation. So Mike, you said you
Yes, I
have
have
a,
a- Ready? I have a motion. We recommend the approval of the sidewalk waiver to require the installation of sidewalks only along Progressive Parkway, and with the understanding that the city may require the installation of sidewalks in the future at the expense of the property owners.
so we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I will second.
We'll vote. Den,
Yes.
Doss,
No.
Nall,
Yes.
Killian,
No.
Seaboth Wilson,
No.
motion fails.
Okay, so that would mean that since the motion failed, the waiver is not granted, so the expectation would be that the sidewalk would be put in.
One thing we've never discussed, once you put those sidewalks in, because of city ordinances, they will be maintained in the wintertime, whether there's anybody using them or not.
Correct.
So that expenses can be great. So just so people understand that.
Okay, next item on the agenda is reconsideration of the loan terms for 25 East Main. Joe?
That was withdrawn.
Okay, the city council and the RDA had previously approved some loans to assist the property owner in making some improvements to the property at 25 East Main Street. Specifically, there are some exterior facade improvements that are needed. This building had some masonry that was falling off the front of the facade. So the owner would be making repairs to that front. They also do some window replacement, doing some work on the roof, some tuck pointing, et cetera, to the exterior. They will also be improving the apartments that are in that building. Currently, there are 3 apartments. They would be remodeling those 3 and adding 2 additional apartments in the basement level that is exposed at the rear. The RDA approved an $80,000 loan and the council approved a $172,000 loan. The property owner has had some unexpected delays with a couple items when the actual purchase of the property, and also they're obtaining some historic tax credits to assist with the improvements to the building. That process took longer than expected. So they are concerned, there's some deadlines that were provided in the development agreement that came with that loan approval, that they have to achieve a certain compliance on the project by certain dates as part of that agreement. They're looking at that now, even though they have not run into a problem with any of those dates yet. They can see that they will not be able to achieve some of those dates. So they would like to have some of those dates modified to extend the time period. So I've included those in the proposed development agreement. I would point out on page 4 of the agreement, section 2B, the existing agreement says the exterior redevelopment construction shall be substantially completed on or before June 1st, 2015. The modified agreement says that should be changed to September 15th, 2016. That 2016 is actually an error. They're asking for September 15th, 2015, so that would be this fall, not a year from this fall. The proposed modification, at least as provided to you, also said that the developer was looking for interest-only payments for the first 12 months of the agreement. The property owner did contact me this morning and said they would like to drop that request. So that is not part of the request. So they're only looking for changes to the dates when some of those items have to be completed.
Okay, and mostly that was brought on by the fact that there was a delay in the closing and then a further delay in the selling of the historic tax credits.
Correct.
And so it would be that it would be pretty I don't even know how you'd get it done by June 1 in terms of the exterior, because I think that she's just taking the property over. So this is basically a change in the dates in the contract to accommodate the late sale.
Right.
Joe, I believe that when we talked about the exterior redevelopment construction, some of that was supposed to have been done last year to stop things falling off. They were supposed to take care of that last winter.
Correct.
No,
Right.
but on a temporary basis.
Yeah,
which was
they
done.
removed the upper, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet of the masonry that was loose.
Okay.
And if you look at it now, they've got some black plastic over the area that was removed. That was to stabilize the facade over the winter, so we didn't have any safety concerns.
So if they were able to do that in the wintertime, they must have been able to they must have had the building by then.
No, actually, the previous
The
owner did
previous
that.
property owner took care of that.
Oh, okay. Because I
So-
just my background and all my research that I've done involving the people involved in all this, I see no reason to change this agreement.
The other thing I would mention, the redevelopment authority considered this at their meeting the other night, and they were not in favor of the interest change, but since that's been removed, that's not for consideration, but they did vote in favor of changing the dates of the agreement.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes, do we have anybody from,
No, she's not here tonight.
she's not here tonight. I'll be very frank with you. If she's not here, that means this isn't probably a high priority for her.
Well, she was here last night, Tom, for the RDA meeting.
Yeah, I know. But, see, I have a philosophy that if you're asking for a loan development agreement to be changed, you should be able to speak to the council and be able to explain the reasons why, even though it went before the RDA. And I'm not questioning the RDA on this. I'm questioning whether that individual or that corporation or that limited liability company actually has the best interests of the people of Platteville if they're not willing to come and explain it to us. That's my only contention. And I feel very disappointed that this developer didn't do that. I'm very proactive in development. I want development. However, I want responsible development for this community. And to me, I'm going to voice my opinion, and that may be incorrect to do, but I'm going to say that it's irresponsible for that person just to go to the RDA and have the RDA make the recommendation when they should have been here to explain to council, because it's our responsibility, not the RDA's, to change this loan development agreement. So,
Tom, I understand what you're saying. It could be that the person was advised that since it was only a date change, that it wasn't a substantive change.
that doesn't make any difference to me.
Me either.
I'm sorry. I know I'm being outspoken about this, but I care about this community. And we need developers that come in, and I'm pro-development, but we need developers to come in and understand that we care about our community. Our residents care. If they're coming from outside the area, we want them to care too. And if they don't have the responsibility to come to us, in front of us, to do that, why are we allowing them to do development? Period. Thank you.
All right, do we have any motion?
A question. Joe said something about one change here.
Right,
Which page was that on?
when, Joe, that was on page 3, Joe, where it says September 16th or September 15th,
Page 4, section 2B,
section 2B,
instead of September 15th, 2016, it should be September 15th, 2015.
And that was personally, that was just an
That was
error
just
in
an
the
error.
typing.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
typo.
that was just a typing error that we caught yesterday.
I make a motion to modify the loan and development agreement to modify the completion dates in the agreement. I guess that was redundant.
Right. Accept the new dates.
To accept the new dates, correct, but not the interest-only payment change.
Okay?
Looks like there's more
I
than
have
one.
a motion.
There's a second. I'll second
I have a
it.
second.
Okay, but it looks,
Okay.
looks like there's more than one date to change.
Yeah, there were many
Dates.
dates.
I said dates.
One
Yeah,
second.
yeah, plural.
Said the dates.
That was the change in this document.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll vote.
Ben,
No.
Das,
Yes.
Nall,
No.
Killian,
Yes.
Seaboth William,
Yes.
Wilson, why do I keep saying Williams? I'm
Changed my
sorry.
last name tonight.
Motion carries.
Wait till she comes back again and wants more.
Okay, let's move on to information and discussion. We have the Platteville welcomes you sign. Jody.
Show your sign.
While Jody's approaching the mic, I just want to remind the council that we did plan to add new welcome signs to the city, and that was in the budget, and we did carry it forward to 2015, and I know Jody's been working very hard on this.
Thank you. Okay, included in your packet are multiple items regarding the lease agreement and sign and all the proposals for costs to install this sign at the location on Highway 8081 that is owned by Wisconsin Power and Light, Alliant Energy essentially. I included a location photo with the green stakes showing you exactly where it's going to go, the lease agreement and the cost, the sign and concrete estimate, which the sign was approved at the November 11th Common Council meeting of 2014. The electrical estimate to get power to the sign so it's lit. Masonry and precast cap, those are two separate costs. The sign permit cost and other, which kind of contains a little bit of stuff that may be unforeseen yet, like insurance, how much the sign is going to cost to light throughout the year, things of that nature. And this is kind of my first stab at this, so if you have anything else you'd like to see or any questions, please just let me know.
So this is the first of the signs.
Yes.
And it's been our position that we should either lease or rent the space on which these signs are placed.
Right.
And so this is the first one that we've had success in getting a lease negotiated. There's one for the east side, but hasn't been so simple.
Right. And this one we did initially propose as an easement, but they were a little against that, and so that's where it became a lease. But throughout this whole process, they've been very, very flexible and helpful, yes.
Okay. So any questions on this?
And just a little insight, our second location, actually, the number one location would be out by the Walmart property. I've been working constantly trying to get answers from them, getting them what they need. I haven't really had a lot of success. I spoke with the realty management company and the spokesperson for them one time and have not had a lot of luck. So I'm going to be working with our attorney on hopefully getting to them. If not, we may need to choose a different location. But like I said, Alliant has been more than cooperative on, providing the lease. Just really easy to work with, so.
Okay.
Any questions?
And we have budgeted in our budget, I think, $38,000, so this is well within the budget, right?
I think it was 30,000, yep.
Yeah, something
Right,
around there.
yep.
Okay. All right, there's no action on this tonight. Does anybody have any additional questions on this that they would want answered prior to the next meeting? Because the next meeting, it would be on for action.
Right.
Just thank you.
Yes, it's been a process, definitely a learning one, so. And I appreciate all the help I've gotten from the committee and staff, so. Thank you.
Good, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Oh, let's see. Next, we go to removal of parking for bus stops. And who
It's a conflict of interest for me, so I'm gonna go sit in the audience for this.
Okay. And so, bus stop, removal of parking. Howard, is this yours to talk about?
Yes.
Okay.
We're looking at, we were looking at the locations for our bus stops, and right now specifically for the summer ones. And we've identified 6 locations where we believe that it's highly likely that there may be parking in these locations during the summer and the rest of the year when these spots are being used. So we're proposing that we designate placing of no parking bus stop signs in these 6 locations. You have them here, south side of Pine Street near the intersection of Elm Street. That's on the south side there across from the library. The second one is south side of Adams, west of Court Street. It's south of O.E. Gray School. There's the church parking lot, St. Mary's parking lot that butts up against that corner. East side of 2nd Street, just north of Herman Street. It's across from the middle school. North side of Camp Street, east of Lancaster Street. It's right now, it's a private home. It's just another location in that area. There's no specific destination there. It's just to a central spot for a bus stop. The west side of Washington Street, just north of Union Street, That's an area that will also be used in the summer and during the school year, probably more during the school year because that's close to a lot of student housing. The last one is the north side of Main Street, just east of Oak Street. It's across from the apartment buildings down there. There's the Jenner Tower parking lot just next to this location, that back parking lot there that they own. So we're looking at the equivalent of about 2 stalls in each location, 35 to 40 feet, so that we can get the buses in there and out of there, so that we can load and unload people during our bus stops.
Will those,
Okay, any council people with questions?
yes, will those be used all the time? Those
The,
bus stops, or only certain times of the year?
Actually, those were scheduled for year-round use.
Okay.
We're focusing on these initially because these are the ones that we feel will have an immediate impact during our summer bus routes. But the bus routes were designed to coordinate and consolidate bus stops as much as possible for the summer versus the school year.
Why wouldn't you have the bus, if you're gonna have a bus route, why isn't it that way all the time? You said a bus route, why would you change it just because the time of the year changes?
Well,
I think we had those already. We've already
we've
approved those bus
we've had
routes.
those,
Asking a
and what we're saying is that we have multiple bus routes based on the time of day and the locations. These bus locations are on what we call the blue route. Well, one of them is on the red route, but they're on a route that is used in the summer and during the academic year.
Will there be other bus stops then that will be signed but won't be utilized certain times of the year? So you're taking away other parking somewhere else, even though they're not gonna be utilized?
We're trying to use existing loading zones where possible. We're looking at other locations where there is currently no parking that we can use as a temporary stopping location without blocking fire hydrants or other emergency facilities like that. And so we're doing what we can to identify the locations that we believe will have the most likelihood of having cars parked there all the time or a lot of the time.
Okay.
The only reason I ask, Howard, is because, as we always talk, parking is critical in this community. Thank you.
Understood.
Tom, any questions?
No.
Ken? Okay, I have had 3 people who want to speak on this issue of removal of parking for bus stops. I will call first the person who's asked to speak for, then I'll ask the person who's asked to speak against, and then I'll have the person who just wants to give us information. So first, speaking in favor is Christina Fields.
Hello again. I live at 945 7th Avenue. I just want to show my support for the bus route. I wasn't part of the committee at all, but as a citizen, I appreciate the fact that our community is looking for ways to provide transportation for people who have no other way to get around. And so we're talking a span of ages, from children through seniors. I very much appreciate that we're doing that for our community. I think they deserve it. And so I recognize that parking is important in the city of Platteville. The locations that these stops are at I wouldn't necessarily consider high parking density locations where there's lots of cars parking in those particular spots. And so I certainly would support that those bus stops be located in those places. I did attend the open meeting in which the university and this public were able to come provide comment, and they were well attended. I think it's another great opportunity looking at how students in our campus, in our community are working together to try to solve a problem. And so I just wanted to show my support for the location of these stops. Thank you.
Thank you. Asked to speak against, Mike Knauts. Knauts?
Hi, my name is Michael Knautz. I live at 825 North 2nd Street, directly behind one of these proposed stops. It's the only parking in front of my house that's on the street, and I only get to use it seasonally as it is, so I sure would like to keep it. I don't really understand the need for this bus service. We have the taxis. I appreciate the fact that people do need to get places, but we have taxis. We have ADRC for the aging population. It seems to me we're triple covering something that probably is covered sufficiently. My big question is, who's going to maintain these stops? I mean, there's going to be trash, there's going to be snow, there's going to be crud, you know. Why are certain parts of the city left off? And why is every map I look at completely different? Howard sent me one. It matches nothing that I find on the college's website, but you know, there's still spots of town missing. Cody's development on the northeast side, Flower Court on the southwest side, Pioneer Road, at least on the map I got. What is this going to cost to ride?
Are you speaking about parking now?
Oh,
We're talking
okay.
about removal of parking.
Okay, well then
relative to
specifically
this.
parking, we have a giant loading zone across the street from me. It's called the middle school. It's heavily used every day. I don't know why it has to be on my side of the street and in my one on-street parking spot that I have.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jack Lutke has asked to speak in general.
My name is Jack Ludke. I'm the executive director of the Main Street program. And I'm here to get some information as well as maybe to give some. I thought we were never going to discuss the word parking again at the council, but here we are. The map that Howard indicated that was sent out, and I thank you for the information on that, indicates that there is one in a location along Main Street, just opposite the Jenner Towers parking lot there. Those spots do not get a lot of use during the day. And my questioning, I guess, revolves around the timing of the bus routes and the signage of them. And I would ask, are the buses going to run on the weekend?
During the summer, no, but during the academic year, yes.
Okay.
At this point, we do not have funding to do the weekend during the summertime.
Okay.
But these will, these same bus routes, bus stops will be used during the academic year weekdays, during evenings, and on Saturdays.
So during the academic year, the hours too will change, you're saying?
Correct.
So they'll extend beyond 7 p.m.?
Monday through Thursday, they'll be 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, Friday it'll be 7 a.m. to 3:15 a.m. And then on Saturday, it'll be 2 p.m. until the 3:15 a.m.
Jack, is your question really, are these going to be posted no parking anytime? Is that
Yes,
what you're?
as I'm trying to get to.
I think that's what you're trying to get to.
Yeah, the hours
What is
that
the
we might
posting
be able
going
to
be?
sign that parking would be available in these two spots. And I have talked to a couple of the merchants down there, and obviously that area is very close to the restaurant district.
Right.
So they would, you know, not favor giving up those spots, particularly in the evening, but during the day, no one, for the most part, uses those spots. And we're only dealing with two parking places there. But I guess my input would simply be that the merchants I talked to didn't have a problem with it, but I have not visited all of them in the area.
I do have a question of staff. You're done, Jack?
Thank you.
Okay, nobody else is there. And I guess my question is, as you looked at these, I mean, we approved the bus routes before with the stops on them. My question is, as you looked at putting in bus stops, did you consider, as you looked at putting in bus stops, the effect that this would have on parking and perhaps moved and altered so that you had the least impact? Was that a consideration when you determined the stops, or did you just put the stops down?
No, we definitely considered where it would, in our opinion, have the least impact.
Have the least impact on parking? Have the
On
least
parking.
impact on?
On parking.
And have you worked at all with the people who are in the neighborhoods where these stops are? And, I mean, I think Mr. Knaus raised a question about maintenance of the stop and trash cans and those kinds of, and I don't know if that's been a problem, but I'm just asking if you have addressed those questions.
We have not addressed those specific questions. However, I did send a letter with the proposals to the adjacent property owners for those 6 stops, and for the Main and Oak Street stop, I also sent a similar letter with diagram to the Main Street program. That's how Mr. Knaus found out about this.
Okay. Sure. You're.
Amy Seaboth Wilson. I am the sustainability coordinator at the university, and in that role, I've been helping with the bus expansion project. So I'd like to address a few of the questions that have come up as well. As far as siting the bus stops, we've spent a lot of time thinking about the best location to put these bus stops that would reach the people who are most likely to ride the bus, and have several criteria as well. We wanted them to be on a sidewalk if at all possible, so that people could stand on that sidewalk without having to walk through grass to get to them. We wanted them to be at places that were not in front of residential houses. So I'll address this in a second with you, Michael. We wanted the stops to be in an efficient way. You guys are familiar with UPS. They don't ever make a left turn, for example. So we tried to route our buses so they only took right turns because they're much faster to make. Our goal was to reach as much of the city as possible in as quick or short of time as practical. So in order to do that, we thought a lot about efficiency of the route and locations of these stops to make the best use possible of our time and resources. It was really difficult to do. And so with the stops before you tonight, we feel that we've achieved a fairly good go at finding practical stops that had the least impact on residential neighborhoods, but yet were the most practical for serving the most neighborhoods in our community. It's not perfect. If you guys can figure out how to make it perfect, that would be awesome. We'd love to know. We have had many bus stops in our community for 2 years now, and we haven't had a problem with litter. People aren't at the stops for very long, so we don't usually have a large crowd. They come up, they get on the bus, and they go. Snow is obviously an issue, as it is anywhere, so just making sure we keep the stops clean is an issue. I don't believe that would fall on the adjacent landowner in any of these cases. So that's something that Howard and I do need to work through eventually. But The one more question that was brought up by Michael, I'd like to address this. He and I did exchange an email or two, and I haven't gotten back to you today. But Howard and I had been talking about how to reroute the stop by the middle school, if at all possible, to avoid going by Michael's house. It's difficult in that neighborhood because of several criteria with the traffic. That's a very congested neighborhood. I think that there's actually room in that route, though, that we can make some changes and try and bring the bus around on the middle school side. There's a lot of one-way streets there too, which make it all extra difficult. So Howard and I are making a best faith effort to amend that one, and we will be working on it
we
between
need
now and
to.
the next meeting if we need to.
If we need to amend the ordinance to remove that one or change that one, we will between now and then.
And I actually believe that yours is probably the only residential house that's on the stops or pretty
Well,
darn close to.
There are a couple others.
A couple.
There's the one at Camp in Lancaster that,
Yeah, and
is
then
there
in their
too.
case, I think that it's on the side lot, not near the front entrance. But
Well-
we tried to work on it. So if there are concerns, we appreciate you talking through it with us.
Okay.
That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. And Amy, could you go back one more time and address, and the city, has the city placed these maps? Where did Jody go? She's gone. On our website?
I don't think they have
I-
yet.
I-
Did you?
I thought we did, but
Oh.
I'll make sure, I'll double check with Jody, but I thought that they're,
Okay.
I
Well, let's
believe that
just
they're
see
on
that we
there.
have the most up-to-date.
Good
And
point.
I suspect that one of the reasons that the new maps aren't on perhaps the university website is because until the semester has concluded and until the fact that we actually have the joint service, we would anticipate that the maps on the university site would be what is currently being used.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what you saw. I don't know. I'll go back and check, but there were many versions of it with different dates, and so you'd have to look for the one with the most recent date because we've been going iterations for the past 2 months. We've been changing it. So I think the university's updated, but if it's not, it's a mistake, and I'll go back and double check. But
Okay, thank
that
you.
could be the confusion. Thank you.
Okay.
Just one more thing for Howard, Amy, that's okay, thank you. When this whole package came together and we first started talking about it, it was going to be also an equal benefit for all the citizens of Platteville, is that correct?
the,
Equal, benefit for us, the citizens to use and the
Sure.
university students to use. But with your information tonight, you said that some of those bus routes weren't going to be available only during time when campus was here. Well, what about the citizens for the rest of those times? Are you going to change that?
I'm sorry, there must have been a misunderstanding or I may have misspoken in a lot of this, but the routes that have been identified are routes that will not only be used in the summertime, but they will also be used during the academic year. We have additional routes that will be done in the academic year because of funding and because of other constraints. But for example, there will be a stop at the high school that will be throughout the year, whether it's the academic year or during the summer. That's an example. Same way with at the pool, for example. We'll have those locations, and they're the same routes. They'll be the same. You'll see a bus pull up, whether it's during the academic year or during the summer.
Didn't you also say something about on weekends?
Yes.
They weren't going to be available except during the
Well,
academic year?
Due to funding, we cannot fund the routes during the summer on Saturday. However, during the academic year on Saturday, those same bus stops that we were talking about, like the high school, like the pool, like different other locations over by Westview School, different places like that, those same ones that are on the route in the summertime will be the same routes that will be used during Saturday during the academic year. If we get
So-
funding in the future,
No,
we will
that's all right.
certainly expand the summer to include Saturday if we get demand for it and if we get the funding for it.
Okay, Mike, enough. Howard, would you please provide a packet of the complete bus routes and how they're scheduled to Mike? Again, I believe we've had those, but I believe the
I have
best
them.
alternative here is for you to take it and then to do your questions to Mike or to Howard and to Amy in her position as sustainability coordinator so that they can answer those questions.
It's important that we all know about it.
I understand that, and we have gone over that. I don't think we have that in front of us tonight, so
We do.
this
We're
was
talking
about
about
removal
buses.
of parking.
May I add 2 seconds to that real quick?
No, we're done with the bus discussion. We were talking about parking and removal of parking. And Mr. Knauts, you've heard that they're going to try and work through that, so maybe by the next time we'll be there. All right, the last item on our agenda tonight is the community garden. I guess request. Is that what it is, Lou?
It's a request,
It's a
yes.
request?
Yes. At the last Parks, Forestry, and Recreation Committee meeting, a group from the Platteville Main Street Sustainability Committee presented the idea of a community garden at the former Kallenbach property at 160 East Mineral Street, which is located across the street from Jenner Tower, right next to Jenner Tower Park. After a long discussion, the Parks, Forestry, and Recreation Committee recommended the approval of a 4-plot trial. The original plan called for raised beds, and the committee wasn't against raised beds, but made the suggestion just for the sake of timing that for the first year they try unraised beds, so they're able to get a better start on it this year. And they've also added some of the following stipulations, and I'm just going to read those. That startup maintenance and reclamation can be accomplished without taxpayer funding. That 8x4 garden plots will be spaced 8 feet or greater apart, or that the space between the beds will be maintained by those leasing the plots, which is the space for our mower. That's where the 8 feet came from. That before any work is started, the city will collect $50 per plot, $45 of which will be a deposit, and $5 will be collected for water usage. That a self-closing faucet be installed to prevent water from being left on in the park, so that while people are watering, that they cannot essentially hook up a hose, just let it run, that they would be smaller plots, filling a bucket, dumping it on. And I should add that would be at the cost of the gardeners. And that policies are adapted to assure that the gardens are well kept. Dead plants and weeds shall be removed regularly. Plantings are restricted to the individual beds, not spilling over into neighboring grass area. And that there are no herbicides, pesticides, or chemical fertilizers used. The following one I should have clarified. This was not discussed at the meeting. It was something I added as a staff member. But I am recommending that the first lease have a termination date. I threw in November 1st. And then if both parties are agreeable, subsequent leases would be a period from May 1st to November 1st. I think those dates could be flexible, but I think it's important that we have an end date just so we know when the deposits would be returned and the beds would be expected to be in appropriate order.
Okay, questions?
Yes, I have one for you, Luke. It sounds like a good idea, and I think people will really enjoy it, but I have one little question to go along with that. If the city so decides to do something with that Kallenbach property, is there a time frame that we can work with so people know it's no longer going to be available?
When I was thinking about this, I considered adding something in there like that. Most community gardens, when I was reviewing their regulations, had that set lease time period. If you wanted to insert something in there with 2-week, month notice, I think a lot of the gardeners would be disappointed, obviously, because you're going to be taking away their crops for the year. I think you're within your right to do that. I left it off because I thought, more than likely you're going to know in advance if something's going to happen, a construction project were to take place. You would know that before May 1st of the year, or you wouldn't be starting before November 1st. But if that's not the case, then I think you should add something in there.
Well, I'm just looking at a possibility, because that's land is for development, or, so it could happen anytime.
Well, and we
But
have.
whatever whatever
yeah.
you're comfortable with,
We
I
have a
guess.
similar situation with the leasing of the rooms here in the, but I mean, I tend to agree that if it hasn't happened by May 1st, if we don't know about it by May 1st, it's unlikely to be developed by November 1st until
Okay.
you go through all the plan commission and all the stuff. Okay, we have one person who has asked to speak in favor of this, and that would be Kendall Welch.
Hello. Does this work? Okay. I'll try and keep this short because.
Kendall, you
it's-
live,
I live at 87 East Main, which is an apartment building within walking distance of the community garden. And as you can probably tell from my fingernails, I'm a gardener. They're pretty dirty. So I'm a bit like a fish out of water. And so living in an apartment where a lot of people in my surrounding area live in an apartment, I think that the site proposed for this location would be a really well-used location. And its proximity to Jenner Towers, I think, is of importance because I did go and speak with a group at Jenner Towers, and there are a few participants interested in sharing a plot, as well as at a farm-to-school meeting, we talked with Neil Wilkins, and the PTO is interested in getting some of the students involved in sharing a plot. So I would just like the council to consider voting on this next week because I think it's a really important opportunity for us to be able to bring together people across cultural barriers and generational barriers to learn about how to grow your own food and kind of have it as like a focal point for sustainability in the community.
okay, anybody who has questions of Kendall? Kendall, did you bring this forward to Parks, Recreation, and Forestry?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you, as a concerned citizen in Platteville.
Thank you.
Okay, and any other questions? Do I understand that there's going to be, how many plots? 8?
4.
How many?
4 initially.
Initially 4 plots. Okay. I'm a little worried about the soil there, but I guess
Okay.
that's your,
Well, I did look into soil tests at Madison, and testing each plot would cost about $30 to test for lead contamination.
Right.
And so I think that's something that we would consider fundraising
Yeah.
for.
I'm not worried about contamination as much as I'm worried about how
Oh,
how
the
fertile
fertility.
it might
The
be.
fertility,
How
yeah.
fertile it might be, especially when it says there's no herbicides, pesticides, or
Mhm.
fertilizers,
So-
chemical fertilizers.
They're using, so you guys are familiar with the Jenner plot, or that plot, there was fill on the.
Right, on the top.
Yeah, so they're talking about the bottom, so it's
Mhm.
the
former-
nicer soil,
It was the
backyard.
former backyard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. No, I'm familiar with the site. Okay. Any other?
Just a bit of information for you. There is also a Methodist Church in Platteville that has plots. If anybody wants to go over and do that,
Okay.
you can just get with them and they tell you what to do and help yourself. It's
I-
right at the church.
Also worth noting, I guess, is there's been a community garden in Platteville on Highway D at Digman Constructions for 5-6 years now, and they've been doing great, and their plots have been filled as far as I know. So I think there's lots of demand for this, and I thank Kendall for going out of his way to do all this.
Actually, I think the plots at Digman's have been here since the great hailstorm, whatever year that was, because my recollection is that
2009.
was,
Before that,
that
yeah.
was the first year of the gardens at Digman's, and just about
I know.
people were just about ready to harvest when we had the hailstorm of the decade, which didn't give people a lot of encouragement, let's just put it that way. Okay, I believe that's the final item on our agenda.
Thank
As
you.
I noted earlier, we do have cake, is that correct, Jan?
Yes.
And she's gonna get that out, so we invite people to stay, visit with Larry. And again, thank you, Larry, for your service to the city of Platteville. And now I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Mike, a second by Amy. We'll vote.
Ben,
Yes.
Gus,
Yes.
Null,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Yes.
motion carries.
Yes.
Oh, if I said yes, you're right. All right.